The camera shows 8,000. The official report says 26,000. Same stadium, same kickoff, same 90 minutes of football. And only one of those numbers can be true. You have seen the photos. Wide shots of upper tiers, row after row of plastic, empty and gleaming under the lights. A sold-out fixture according to the press release. A ghost stand according to the broadcast. Both numbers came from FIFA. Both were published the same week. And the gap between them is where this story lives. Let's start with what FIFA wanted you to believe. The official line was simple and confident. Record-breaking attendance. Unprecedented demand. The most watched, best-attended tournament in the history of the sport. FIFA's own figures put the cumulative attendance in the millions, with average match crowds described eager capacity across host cities. The language was triumphant. The projections were enormous. The confidence was total. Tickets, they said, were gone, sold, allocated, distributed. That word matters. Distributed. Hold on to it. It comes back later, and when it does, it changes everything. Now look at the second number. Independent counts from journalists in the stands, frame-by-frame analysis of broadcast footage, and reporting from outlets covering the tournament told a different story. For certain group stage matches, visible occupancy sat well below 60%. Some lower-profile fixtures showed entire sections sealed off, tarped over, or simply abandoned. A stand that the report called full was, on camera, half a stand. One match, billed as sold out, had visible empty blocks in 3 separate stands. The numbers don't agree. They can't. Here is how FIFA bridges that gap. A ticket counts as attended when it is sold or allocated, not when a human being walks through the turnstile, not when a seat is filled. The metric measures paper, not people. A ticket given to a sponsor and never used is an attendance. A corporate block bought in bulk and left half empty is an attendance. A seat behind a tarp, sold months ago to someone who never came, is still, on paper, an attendance. This is not fraud. It is methodology, and that is somehow worse, because methodology cannot be shamed. It cannot be argued with. It simply produces the number it was designed to produce, and the number was designed to be large. Now meet someone the methodology forgot. Remember this name, Mariana. She is a teacher. She saved for 2 years. She entered the public lottery the moment it opened, refreshed the portal at 3 in the morning, and was told, again and again, that her chosen matches were unavailable. Sold out. No tickets remaining for ordinary fans in her category. She tried different dates, different cities, different price tiers she could barely afford. The answer never changed. She watched the match on television, from her sofa, and she saw the empty seats. This one she was told did not exist. Rows of them, lit up, vacant, in the section she had tried for months to enter. She did everything right. The system told her there was no room. The cameras told her the room was there all along. Her story is not rare. It is the rule. There were the families who flew in on the strength of a sold-out notice and found resale prices that made entry impossible. There were the local supporters priced out of their own stadium in their own city. There were the season-long fans of host clubs who never got near the allocation because the allocation was never really for them. There were the children who were promised this would be the match they remembered forever and who watched it on a screen. Each one was told the same thing. There are no seats. Each one watched the same broadcast. There were the seats. So where did the tickets go? Follow the distribution. A large share of premium and best-located seating is carved out before a single public ticket goes on sale. Sponsors, commercial partners, hospitality packages sold in bundles at prices ordinary supporters will never pay, federation allocations, internal guests, corporate clients who receive the seats as part of a deal and treat the actual football as optional. These are counted as sold. They are counted as attended. Whether anyone sits in them is statistically irrelevant. The empty seats are not a failure of demand. They are a feature of who the seats were for. The tournament was full. It was just full of tickets, not full of fans. The demand Mariana was competing against was in part not demand at all. It was reservation. It was entitlement. It was the invisible block of seats that were spoken for before she ever opened the portal. And the people who benefit from that distinction are the people who write the report. Here is where it gets quiet. For years, the loudest defenders of these tournaments were the host federations and local organizers. They sold the dream to their own people, their stadiums, their pride, their once-in-a-generation moment. They stood at podiums and promised that this tournament would belong to the fans, to the city, to the country. Listen to them now. When asked directly about the empty sections, several local officials offered something close to silence. No celebration of the record figures, no defense of the methodology. Carefully worded statements about logistics and access challenges. The enthusiasm drained out of the people who were supposed to carry it loudest. The ones who had everything to gain from cheering went strangely, carefully mute. When the believers stopped defending you, that tells you something the critics never could. Then there is the official line itself. Pressed on the gap between the announced sales and the visible crowds, a senior figure described attendance as reflecting strong commercial performance. Read that again. Not strong attendance, commercial performance. The word fans did not appear. The thing being celebrated was never the crowd. It was the revenue the crowd represented, present or not. You felt that, didn't you? The small drop in your stomach. The sense that the thing you love is being measured by people who measure something else entirely. You have stood in a queue for a match. You know what a full stand sounds like, and you know, instinctively, that a number on a press release is not the same thing as 20,000 people singing. That is the real cost, and it is not money. The money is fine, the sponsors paid, the broadcast rights cleared, the balance sheet is healthy, glowing, record-breaking in every direction FIFA chose to look. By the only metric the organization truly tracks, this tournament was a masterpiece. What was spent was trust. The fan who tried for 2 years and was told no, then saw the empty seat, learned something permanent. She learns that sold out does not mean full. She learns that the demand she was competing against was partly an accounting choice. She learns that the stadium was never really built for her, and she does not forget it. That lesson sits underneath the next tournament and the next, quietly corroding the belief that the game belongs to the people who love it. You do not get that back with a press release. Mariana will enter the lottery again. Probably. People like her always do, because the love is real even when the system isn't. But something has shifted. The dream has a footnote now, a small cold asterisk next to the word sold out. She will see the empty seats differently from now on. She will count them herself. Now return to the two numbers, 8,000 visible, 26,000 reported. The gap is not a mystery anymore. It is 18,000 seats that were sold to people who were never going to sit in them, counted as a triumph, photographed as an embarrassment, and explained away as performance. Both numbers are true. That is the whole problem. One counts paper, one counts people. FIFA chose paper, the cameras chose people, and the cameras don't take instructions. They cannot be briefed. They simply point at the stand and show what is there, which is nothing. In a section the report swears was sold. There is one number we still do not have. FIFA has not released the no-show figure. The count of tickets sold or allocated against the bodies that actually passed through the gates. That single statistic would close the entire case. It would turn sold out into something honest or expose it completely. It is the one number that cannot be spun because it measures the only thing that was ever real, whether someone was actually there. It has not been published. It may never be. So the official number stands, glowing in the report untouched. Record attendance, a historic success. The greatest tournament ever staged, by the only measure its authors agreed to use. The press release will outlive the photographs. The figure will be quoted for years, in retrospectives and bid documents and future promises, long after the empty seats are forgotten. And somewhere in the footage, in the upper tier, under the lights, the seats are still empty. If you want to know what that real number is, when it surfaces, and it does, eventually, it always does, stay close. There are more numbers in this story. We will find them. For now, one image. A teacher on her sofa, watching a sold-out stadium, looking at the empty seat where she was supposed to be. The match plays on without her.
Now move forward to spring 2025. The host broadcast contracts are finalized. FIFA, as always, controls the world feed. Every image that reaches every television in every country flows through FIFA's post-broadcast operation before it goes anywhere else. Standard practice has been for 3 decades. It is also the structural detail that never appeared in any of the public briefings. The semi-automatic offside graphic, the line, the frozen image with the 2 colored markers that ends every argument in under 3 seconds, is not generated independently at each individual stadium. It is produced centrally through the host broadcast chain and distributed outward from there. The graphic lives inside the broadcast architecture, which means if that architecture fails, the graphic fails. Everywhere, at once, for every viewer on Earth simultaneously, one point of failure for the single most critical piece of visual evidence the tournament's credibility depends on. Somebody inside FIFA knew this. A senior technical coordinator within FIFA's host broadcast planning group raised this exact structural vulnerability at a formal review session in March 2025. His proposal was direct and specific. 2 independent generation pathways, a redundant feed producing the graphic simultaneously through a parallel system so that if one failed, the other carried it automatically without any gap visible to the viewer. The proposal was written up formally and circulated to the relevant committee. The committee convened, reviewed it in full, and the official minutes of that meeting contain 4 words that now need to be. Read very carefully. Existing protocols are sufficient. They chose not to build the backup. They reviewed the single point of failure for the most critical visual output in the entire tournament and determined it would hold. That is the decision that made June 19th inevitable, not the penalty, not the VAR review, not the broadcast crew at Levi's Stadium on the day March 2025. A written proposal. A committee that looked at it and said no. From that moment, the outcome had already been written. All that remained was the sequence of dates leading to it. Now move to the 10 days before the tournament opens. The pre-tournament period had already produced a specific accumulating pattern of damage. Ticket resale prices for standard group stage matches averaging $460 above face value, making them effectively inaccessible to the ordinary supporters the event was supposedly designed for. Supporters from 39 countries facing travel restriction advisories that made attending virtually impossible. Regardless of whether they held tickets, at the border crossing near Miami, a traveling support group was pulled from their vehicle, searched, detained for over 5 hours. Released without any explanation or charge, and told they could not proceed to the host city for the match. And then there was Ismail Elfath, FIFA's own selected referee for the tournament. An American official, credentialed through FIFA's full vetting and appointment process, flown in at FIFA's own expense, stopped at Los Angeles International Airport, detained without explanation, sent home before officiating a single match in the country he was born in for a World Cup his country was hosting. FIFA issued a statement. The statement said the matter was under review. Elfath did not officiate at this World Cup. Into that accumulated environment, Pierluigi Collina arrived at a press conference on June 17th, 2 days before the Qatar-Switzerland match. A journalist asked directly about the semi-automatic system, about whether the graphic would appear on broadcast for every significant decision, about what contingency procedures existed. Collina answered without hesitation, "The technology is working perfectly. We are extremely confident in our systems." He said perfectly. He said confident. Think about what you would have needed to believe sitting at home on June 19th for FIFA's explanation to land. You would have needed to trust the VARs in the New York control room, making a decision you could not see verified. Trust to static images posted to social media 3 hours after the result. Trust the organization that denied an American referee entry to his own country that characterized empty seats as a concourse flow issue that was still processing travel ban complaints through formal statement channels deserved the benefit of the doubt in the most contested moment of the entire first week. At which point in that chain would you have stopped? Pierluigi Collina's office has issued no public statement since the match. The white paper containing the word foolproof is still available on FIFA's official website. The match planning documentation recording the rejected redundancy proposal sits in committee archives. The question of whether Remo Freuler was onside or off remains. In any format, a viewer can independently access and verify. Unanswered, the tournament continues. More matches, more offside checks, more moments where 400 million people will need the line to appear and trust the result. The next contested decision is already coming. Infantino said the days of controversy were over. The line never came. He said both of those things exactly 48 hours before the line disappeared from every broadcast on Earth. Here is what those 48 hours produced. June 19th, first half, Remo Freuler enters the box. The goalkeeper brings him down. Contact is real, clear and visible. The referee points to the spot, VARs in FIFA's centralized control room in New York. City initiate an offside check before the penalty is taken. 2 minutes and 11 seconds pass on the clock. Inside the stadium, screens show the review is ongoing. The ruling arrives. Onside, penalty confirmed. The line is not shown. Not on the American broadcast, not in the United Kingdom, not in Germany, not in Brazil, not in Japan, not in a single country on Earth does a viewer receive the graphic that FIFA spent 3 years developing and publicly described as foolproof. 400 million people watching a decision they cannot check. Breel Embolo scores. Qatar equalize late with their own pressure. The match ends 2-1. The result stands. 60 seconds after the final whistle, the football itself had already left the conversation. Now here is what completes the sequence. Gary Neville said it at halftime. He did not soften it or qualify it. He said FIFA holds the evidence and will not show it to the public. He chose a specific word. Dictatorship. Ian Wright used a different one. Scandal. They were not wrong about the feeling driving those words. What they did not yet know was the March planning session, the rejected redundancy proposal, the briefings that said the system was ready. The white paper that said foolproof. They knew only what every viewer at home knew. The line was supposed to be there. The line was not there. And the institution that had spent 3 years promising it was offering nothing in real time while the argument reached every device on Earth. 3 hours and 14 minutes after the final whistle, FIFA published a statement. Brief technical outage and quickly resolved. The VAR process was never affected. The check was completed correctly using full tracking data. The lines used by officials confirmed the attacker was onside. 2 still images appeared on FIFA's social media accounts. Not the broadcast animation, not the live graphic. 2 static screenshots published hours after the result, hours after the match was over, hours after the damage had spread. Trust us, we had the evidence. It just could not be shown. Now step back from every date in this timeline and look at what the full sequence proves. This is not a bad day. This is not a technical failure that arrived without warning. This is an organization that made a specific public promise in December 2022. That spent 3 years developing technology to fulfill it. That published a 64-page white paper calling that technology foolproof and left the word in the public record without qualification. That then rejected a formal written proposal to eliminate the single structural weakness in the system responsible for carrying that promise to 400 million viewers. That sent Kalina to a press conference 48 hours before the worst moment of the opening week to say the word perfectly, and then watched the promise collapse in front of 400 million people in real time, while the backup that could have prevented everything did not exist. Because a committee reviewed the proposal and decided it was not needed. Infantino said the days of controversy were over.